Cool. So I don't even know how we were introduced. Do you remember how you were introduced?
Yes, it's actually through Will McElroy.
Oh, right.
Um,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
And
we've
how do you
known
know him? How do you know him?
not that well actually. We have a mutual friend, and I met him at that guy's wedding actually.
Okay.
And I think you remember that I went to Wesleyan and put two and two together.
Right. Right. Cool. Yeah. So I think I said in some of my text messages, or messages to you, we've done probably a dozen of these things, and they're generally my friend. I'm 60. I was the class of 86. So they're all a bunch of old dudes. And so you're the first relatively recent graduate, and so I'm sure the students are going to be super psyched to be done with the nursing home crowd and and actually talk to somebody who can relate to. So this is great.
Definitely.
So I like to ask a couple big questions and then kind of drill down on your story. So I'm sorry, I've got a lot of people here, but uh so one big question I always like that, and I know that you're midway in your career, but so far, what are you most proud of?
Yeah, I don't know if that's as much career focused or my answer is focused on career as much as it is life advice is just surround yourself with good people. Uh, I'm fortunate. I was raised in a good family and good friends and surrounded myself with a lot of good folks. And I think that's led me to where I am today. My path has probably been a little bit more unconventional than most. And so from both a hockey standpoint, which is definitely a big part of my life, and a career standpoint, I think I'm proud of the people I've surrounded myself with. And I think it's helped get me to where I am today. And, just even like a will connection, right? That we just mentioned. I don't know him that well, but if you meet good people and they put you in touch with good opportunities, I'm happy to be here today and a part of this. So I think that's, probably a bigger overarching theme.
And so if you had to tell these guys what's one mistake you made that you tell them not to make?
Uh, I actually thought a lot about that question when I saw you send it. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know the answer to that because I think each mistake leads you to where you are today, and I've made plenty of them. And I think, more relevant would just be the ones on the job. And the ones on the job from my end have always been, my intent has been there. I've always wanted to do good work. I've always worked hard. Mistakes happen, right? And you learn from them, you move on, you realize it's not the end of the world. Everybody makes mistakes along the way, and it's what makes us human. And I think, I'm sure I've done dumb things at work in terms of, answering a question wrong or, an evaluation of a company wrong or something like that, you learn and you move on to the next rep. And as long as your intent is right and you're an honest person and willing to admit that, and, I think it makes us human.
Yeah, we've talked a lot. I mean, I don't know how familiar you are with the growth mindset, but we've talked a lot about that in class, both as athletes and as students and as potential business people. And we're all just trying to get to our
Yeah.
potential, and mistakes are part of that. And how
Yeah.
you respond to mistakes and how you learn from your mistakes, that's the key. And really, it's not relative to anybody else. It's just relative to your own potential.
Yeah.
So we talk about that a lot.
In time, I would tell you too, and this is some of the questions you'd ask, but I didn't know anything about accounting or finance or anything like that until candidly, I think winter break of my junior year, which the recruiting cycle nowadays to get into banking is getting earlier and earlier every year. And so for me to get a banking internship, as part of my story, kind of got lucky. And if I could go back and change it and start the networking, earlier, then sure, I may have ended up at a bulge bracket or something like that. But I don't view that as much as a mistake. It's more of a learning and the earlier you can get in front of this stuff and actually learn about it, the better. Uh, I didn't land my capstone internship until I think February or March of my junior year, which is again later for a banking internship to actually hit. And I'm happy with where I am today. And some of that stuff, even my private equity, move. Most people are hitting the desk and starting the interview right away. And for me, it was like, no, that doesn't make any sense. I haven't learned anything about my current role. Why am I going to start recruiting for a different job already? And so, I took my time. I realized what made sense for me. I made sure I understood concepts and what I was doing and the impact it was making. And then, when it was the right time, I said, okay, it's time to make that jump and it's time to go do it at that point. So a little bit of a tangent. And it also kind of lines
No,
up
it's
with
all good.
my hockey career as well, too. I mean, I didn't know I wanted to play junior hockey until pretty late in my senior year of high school. I was planning on going to school, and took 3 years off before going to Wesleyan. Came in as a 21-year-old freshman, and had I
Wow.
gone at wanting to go to college right away, my trajectory would have been entirely different. From a hockey perspective, if I had done things differently and started thinking more junior route earlier in high school, that may have changed. But all of those you could call a mistake or a learning is more just you know, other opportunities that came out instead of it.
So these guys are all freshmen and sophomores. So hopefully we're helping them get ahead of the ball a little bit. But I am definitely on the page of like, you don't need to go the route everyone else is going. Like you should go at your own route and like wherever the hell that takes you. I didn't know that you played 3 years of juniors. That, geez, Louise, like that's a commitment. So you got to Wesleyan, and what did you like the most about Wesleyan? What are some of your kind of fondest memories of Wesleyan?
Uh, so honestly, hockey, huge hockey player, and fan to this day. Still follow the team. It's been a big part of my life, and I think I wouldn't even tell you like the games. Honestly, it was the practices, the bus rides, the road trips. Like that was, you close to your teammates. Like that was a ton of fun and a tight knit community. So for these guys, the sports teams or whatever they're doing, their hobbies, their clubs. Um, just had a ton of fun doing that and looking back and like laughing. And it's never like, oh, I wish I scored another goal or another assist or whatever. It was more like, yeah, it was just so much fun being in that environment and around those types of people that I really, really enjoyed. Going out, like making the most of it. And I worked really hard and I studied really hard, but I did go out. I had fun. I enjoyed the time, whether it was on Fountain or wherever it was, just having a good time with buddies and, having a normal experience.
Yeah, so these guys are they're basketball, soccer, and rowers. We did not get hockey players this year. Maybe you can help us with that next year.
Definitely.
But I mean, I would concur. I was a rower, and like I said, 86. So whatever it's been, like I'm going on 40 years. And my best friends are my rowing buddies.
Yeah.
Still, 40 years later, it's crazy. I've had a couple of them on here. So, what do you think what did you learn that was most applicable? What did you learn at Wesleyan that was most applicable in your business career?
Good question. So I honestly, like I didn't have the accounting and finance background, like I mentioned. There's probably one or two courses at West that I did take, but even those weren't that applicable to my career to a massive extent. I mean, they were helpful, but um, I think picking up concepts, like new concepts, learning quickly and critically was super important. So I was a industry generalist at Capstone, meaning I didn't actually focus in any particular area. I worked on deals from a healthcare products company to a marketing agency to an alcohol wholesaler. You name it. I worked on a bunch of different random industries. And in order to actually understand the fundamentals of those and what those companies do and mean, you have to learn quickly. I mean, the industry's pretty fast paced, the job's pretty fast paced, so you're constantly learning new concepts. Let alone my current gig at Edgewater, we're sector specific investors, so looking at specialty chemical businesses or specialty industrials, advanced materials, life sciences, those are all super complex industries, and uh, I didn't know anything about any of them really before I even took the job at Edgewater, and have learned a ton just on the job. And I think taking a random course at Wesleyan, whether it was an elective or whatever it was, being able to get smart quickly and knowing what matters and focusing on, the critical few has been, I think, pretty critical in my career.
What was the Sabermetrics Club? What the hell is that?
I think Moneyball. So,
Oh, okay, okay,
yeah,
okay.
so we competed in a competition at Columbia, and I did it. I think one year I did it, maybe my junior or senior year. And my roommate actually was the head of the club. Um, Super smart guy. He actually works for an NHL team now and is pretty successful with, I think, pioneering a lot of that methodology and line of thinking into hockey.
Wow, that's cool. What is Team Scotty?
Yeah, so that was an internship. Candidly, when I was playing hockey, I didn't want to go bust tables or do anything like that. And my neighbor growing up, I had cut his grass since I think I was in like fifth grade. He was actually also my little league baseball coach. I knew he did something in sports. I knew he did well for himself. I didn't know what it was, but I reached out to him when I was playing hockey and said, "Hey, I'd love a job for the summer." And he had obviously seen my work ethic and my character growing up. Hired me, and I was an intern there for, geez, 4 years or 4 summers in a row. And they're an insurance brokerage for Major League Baseball. So both life and disability. Life is more on the minor league side. But the disability side is probably the coolest. So uh, players obviously have big contracts that are guaranteed in MLB. So if someone gets hurt, ownership's out a lot of money. Uh, Team Scotty would help, get coverage for certain players or uh, certain parts of players if there was an exclusion to protect ownership.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
But it wasn't for the players, it was for the owners to protect their asset in the player.
Yep.
That's cool. Very interesting. And so so you got this internship with Capstone super late. How did you end up getting it?
Yeah. So after Team Scotty, which was summer of sophomore year, I had a conversation with, again, my neighbor who was the founder of that business and said, "Hey, I love it here. I want to come back. But I also feel like it would be doing myself a disservice and you a disservice if I didn't go explore what else is out there." Um, so I started just researching, what would be interesting to me. My brother works in finance, a different arm of finance, but I talked to him and I'm pretty similar to him, I like to think. So started learning about finance and what that would entail. I threw my hat in a bunch of different rings in junior year, just hit the books pretty hard in terms of self-study and self-learning and um got a call back for Capstone. So the founder of Capstone is a Wes alum. Don't know a class, but definitely some good networking there. And one of the guys in the baseball team in the grade above me or two grades above me, who I was, acquaintances with at school, came across my resume and said, "Hey, we'll give this kid a first round," and landed the internship from there. So I think having that connection probably helped, honestly, but also, when it came down to it, I nailed the technicals and, also there's a lot of soft skills that I'd probably hammer home to the guys on the call that it's not just, how smart you are. Everyone at Wesleyan's smart, right? It's more, do I want to work with this guy? Do I want to, battle in the trenches? Do I want to see this guy 9 to 5? Or if it's more hours than that, do I want to be around that person uh, a lot? And is it someone I can work with? And a lot of the intangibles, even, I feel like are probably more important because, like I said, everyone's smart. You can learn, you can be taught. But having like a good attitude and like positivity in the workforce is just super critical. And I honestly think like Tom, you said everyone on the call is an athlete of some sort. Like I think that environment also is just invaluable. So growing up in a locker room or on a team and like some of the stuff that I think athletes take for granted, like, oh, of course, like, I'm going to put the team first. Like that type of mentality, not everyone has that, which I don't know if I fully appreciated before, joining the workforce that like that is very, very important to have. Um, and so I look at that as something pretty important to where I am today.
Yeah, like one thing that we actually part of our course is public speaking and communication, and which we spend a lot of time on. And part of the reason there is like just to get across like all those soft skills.
Yep.
And I keep telling the guys, I'm like, well, if somebody comes on campus and because I've done it, they got 10 back-to-back interviews. Like, there's gonna be one guy who's like a rocket scientist, just too smart for the job. He's gonna annoy
Yeah.
the shit out of everybody. Out of everybody else, there's probably half that, maybe aren't really good qualified for the job. So you throw those out, and then you have the rest, and it's just the one you like the most. That's it,
Yeah.
period.
Yep.
Which one do you want to hang out with? And so, like, your job is to be likable, is to connect with the interviewer, tell
100.
good stories about yourself, make sure you have a positive attitude, and connect. And so, and it's not like the last digit on your GPA absolutely doesn't fucking matter, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's just that intangible part. So definitely. So what does Capstone do? I'm not really that familiar with them.
Tom, one more point on that. I did lead recruiting at Capstone towards the end of my tenure there and also at Edgewater. And uh, you're 100% right. I look to make sure, there's a checklist there. That was the GPA a certain number, or college scores or whatever it is certainly important. But like at the end of the day, like you either vibe with someone or you don't. And like if someone has a higher GPA than someone else but has a bad attitude, or it's not worth it. You don't want to spend, you're hiring someone indefinitely at that point, and it's not worth the investment into training them and getting them up to speed. So I would emphasize like, yeah, it's important to have the GPA and hit your technicals and do all that right in the interview. But at the end of the day, if you're likable and you can connect with someone, then certainly more important.
Yeah, and those communication skills are it's like a muscle. You have to get a lot of reps in because like out of the box, you're probably gonna be nervous and you're not gonna come off that great. And so that's why
Yep.
we're spending a ton of time on it.
Yep.
So what is Capstone? I'm not that familiar.
So very small boutique investment bank. I worked in the sell side team there, so sell side M&A. So typical investment banking stint. Again, generalist firm, a bunch of different groups within it. When I joined the firm as an intern, it was about 50 people. It was based in Boston, 10-week internship program. I came back full time. And right when I came back, they were in the middle of acquiring Headwaters MB, which is another investment bank. So the firm went from 50 to 250 within, I think it was my first 6 or 12 months there. And then they were acquired by Huntington probably 2 years ago now. But typical investment banking stint, lower middle market, so um, opposite of a bulge bracket. But I liked it a lot better, and I still work with these similar type businesses today or type size businesses today, where it's typically an owner operator. So your neighbor could be the one owning it, and just runs any type of business, right? And is a generalist, you're engaged because that person is at a point in their career where they either want to retire or, maybe take some chips off the table in terms of how the company's done and be rewarded for that experience. Or they're looking for a partner to help kind of supercharge growth. So at Capstone, I was involved in the full deal process from pitching to win new business against other investment banks or all the way to closing deals. To which point, you sell and move on to the next. But I guess another point here, and I know I'm ranting a little bit, but on somewhere like Capstone, you're working on, geez, it could be 6 or 7 deals at a time. And if I think transferability and how that relates to, the people in the class, it's the same thing you're doing, right? I mean, let's say you're going to class and you're doing your homework, but then you're also multitasking that with hitting the gym and having a social life and practice and competing, like all of that is a full day. And I think that was important to learn too, is yeah, it's a little different. You're sitting at your computer a lot more and it's pretty constant through the day, but like you guys are all busy and you're all, grinding from, 8, 9 in the morning or sometimes earlier to pretty late at night, I'm sure. So I felt like that was also something that got hammered into me pretty much in college without even realizing it. So, um, yeah, so Capstone, I'm happy to answer any of their questions, but just
Yeah, so what was your analyst experience kind of similar to like the bulge bracket firm, or was it a little different? And how much training did you get? All that kind of good stuff.
yeah, so a little different, I'd say. More accountability from my understanding. I've got friends in the industry, so I was familiar with some of the bulge bracket experience, but yeah, I mean, I got training. A lot of it was a steep learning curve right when I hit the desk. I think I started 2 weeks after graduating. Um, and I would say more accountability where internship, you're still grinding, but there's certain expectations there. I think full time, like you're in charge of running certain points of a deal, whether that's, even administrative tasks all the way to even more responsibility. And I think that ultimately dictates how you grow within an organization is if you're dominating those initial tasks, you're organized, you're doing a solid job, even on the easy things, you tend to get more and more. And That was kind of my experience, was just growing in responsibility, having a little bit more of a proactive mentality of, yeah, happy to take that on, happy to take that off your plate and make your life easier to the people above me. So yeah, I'd say pretty typical analyst experience. Bulge bracket again a little different. I think they're working more on a couple projects at a time versus I think uh, several smaller ones. And some of them are more siloed in terms of the work they're doing. But I got more of an all-encompassing experience in kind of doing it all. Even talking to potential buyers, which I don't think you always get at like a bulge bracket, right?
Was your lifestyle as miserable as theirs, or was it a little bit more manageable?
The way I like to categorize it is I had some long weeks, right? I think that's part of the gig. It's what you sign up for. I went in probably expecting it was gonna be worse than it was, but I certainly had those very, very, very long weeks and long nights. I think what isn't expressed as much is that it does ebb and flow. So there are some nights or weekends where you're totally cool and you're hanging out. Then there's other ones where you're really working. So again, I didn't do the bulge bracket circuit, so I don't know as much, but um, I would describe my experience at Capstone as I worked really hard. It ebbed and flowed, and I also had some of those really long days or weeks.
What do you think was the most? So you were there for a while. You're there almost 4 years, right?
Yep.
What was the most important thing you learned, and what did you hate the most about it?
Uh, Most important thing I learned, be proactive, work hard, right? I also want to hit on that. Like I came into the job thinking I had to know all of these, technical accounting and finance and this person knows how to do an LBO already, and I have no idea what that is. And honestly, Tom, I just worked hard and I learned, like I said, everyone on the call or the guys and girls that are in your class, like they work hard and they're smart, and that is what it takes in order to move forward is be detail oriented, be proactive, good work ethic, positivity. I find that asking questions is super helpful where people are willing to like people that are likable and asking questions. I've never worked at a place where doors have been shut and it's, hey, you should know that or you should figure that out. Everyone started with a knowledge base of zero, right? So getting to a point where you're comfortable, you're, willing to ask the right questions and work hard was very valuable to me. And then also just like taking advantage of opportunities. If, hey, you're going to be the only analyst on this, there's not going to be an associate above you. Okay, give it to me, bring it on, going and talking to your managing director after a deal or whatever it was. Hey, what can I do to improve? I think just that type of mentality, especially from an athlete, is super transferable. Your coach is giving you feedback, telling you how you can get better. You always want to know how to improve as an athlete. It's the same thing in the business world. In terms of what I didn't like I said, I've had some mess ups along the way. I wasn't perfect. And I think just like brushing it off and having thick skin, whether that was a dumb error or, sending the wrong email or spelling error or the numbers were off a little bit, like that happens. You're moving very quickly and you're working hard, but having tough skin and, if it is a bad comment, you get back, hey, this memorandum you wrote is terrible, right? I need you to completely redo it. This is like burning my eyes. You're like, oh, that's awful to read. And like, I'm, kind of really tired right now, but having that thick skin, getting up the next day or staying up that extra hour to get it done and just brushing it off is, you know, it also shows the person above you, hey, I'm tough. You're not going to toss me around like that. I'll keep moving.
So what motivated you to think about moving over to private equity, and kind of how did that transition work out?
So, uh, yeah, I felt like, and I think I hit on this earlier in the call. I wasn't ready to start interviewing for PE a month into my job at Capstone. It didn't feel right. I knew other analysts in the field were doing that, and I give people credit who want to do that, but it wasn't for me. I went along my own timeline. I got promoted after 2 years, and then at that point, around that time, it was late. It was mid 2019. A little bit after that, I started to think, wow, this is a lot of rinse and repeat. I know how this works. I know, a lot of my learning I've conquered, obviously more to learn, more upward growth that I could have done. but I felt at a point where I wanted to learn more and I wanted to learn the other side. You hear a lot about private equity, you hear a lot about what the buy side's like. And I was like, you know what? Like, I think it's time to move on. And I also, a lot of my fellow analysts had uh, already made the jump, whether that was out of the industry or to PE or whatever it was. And I thought, okay, like now's my time. And so, and I also knew that I wanted to be prepared. I didn't want to waste all my bullets and go interview if I wasn't ready and wasn't prepared for the interviews because those are quite technical. And so it was right around COVID hitting. So kind of obviously COVID was horrible, but it also allowed me an opportunity to work from home and focus a little bit on recruiting at that time and not have to try to sneak out or anything like that for interviews or networking. So I got in contact with some recruiters, got my resume updated, and was ready for the technical portions of private equity. I'd spoken to some people in the Wesleyan network, and ultimately I got an email from a recruiter that said Cleveland-based sector-specific investing. I was like, okay, why not? I'm again opening as many doors as I can, knowing I can close them later if I need to. And uh, would I've told you ever growing up that I'd move to Cleveland someday? Probably not. I don't know if that's on a lot of people's lists, but I'm from Pittsburgh originally. It's about a 2 hour drive. I wanted to be closer to my family, and so I threw my hat in that ring. And the more I got talking to the people, and we call it Midwestern values at Edgewater, but truly I found that like the people cared about me. They cared about my family, my friends. We've got a pretty lean team, so it's similar to Capstone in terms of structure. It wasn't a huge organization. Um, and I also was probably most nervous about the industries. I was like, I haven't taken a chemistry class in like 10 years. And so that worried me a little bit, but I knew I had the technical chops from a financial and accounting standpoint. Uh, Met the team, really liked them, really gelled, came out and golfed with some of my partners before I took the job. And, I just took the leap. I mean, I felt like, pardon me, I felt like I had done that with juniors where I lived in three different cities and kind of took the leap. I didn't know a ton of people in Boston outside of the Wesleyan community that I met in school. I was like, I can make the move to Cleveland. Worst case, it's not far from home. It's more affordable. Everything like that just kind of lined up. And so I took the job. Um, and I also realized along the way that like I'm learning these industries. I think it gives us an edge. There's thousands of private equity funds in North America, and being able to differentiate yourself via the industries and having actual experts on your team that know these industries and how to run these businesses gives you an edge. So I'm actually grateful that I'm not, a generalist anymore. I think was all lined up nicely, and I've grown along the way. And I
How
also should.
much?
I didn't. A lot of PE, you'll do a two and out where hey, you're 2 years on the job, and you got to go to business school. And for me, I was like, I don't know if I really want to go to business school. I prefer to have that upward mobility if possible. And so far it's held true. So
How big a firm is it? How much capital?
we have a $330 million committed fund.
That's pretty good size.
Yep.
Um, what so what's been the best day on the job so far?
Best day.
Yeah.
Closing a deal is always fun. So our job is to deploy capital and do it the right way. And I think I've closed a few. I've exited one since I've been here. Um, those are always exciting. I'll also say like getting to work with management teams is one of the big reasons I wanted to make the move as well. Uh, Sell side, you get to a point, you sell the business, you're done, right? Kind of not my problem anymore. I hate to phrase it like that, but that's or the deal doesn't actually trade. Okay, it's not, as an analyst, it's not really anything you can control. At Edgewater, that's when the fun kind of begins, is when you buy something, because then it's like, okay, what did I buy? Where are the skeletons? How do I grow this thing? How do I actually operate this company and learn? And I'm not an operator. I've never been an operator. And so actually seeing the inner workings and some of the levers that my partners or operating partners pull to uh, help grow these businesses. And Edgewater is a fund that should emphasize this too. I like to say we're the good private equity where we're putting more resources in and helping to grow and scale, and doing it the right way. So actually being a part of that, and every company's different, and not everything's blue skies. So being a part of that and actually seeing it and knowing how to run a business has been probably the most fun. I don't know if that's a single day, but there's a lot of good experiences within that.
So, what, kind of in general, so we have these student athletes, who are just beginning to figure themselves out, they're freshmen and sophomores. And what general advice would you give them, or so let's start with this. Like, what specific things would you tell them to do, like in the next 12 months to like get their act together?
Start somewhere. I I'll never sit here and tell you that I don't procrastinate sometimes, or I never did that in my life because it was always, oh, I'll get to updating my resume. I want to do that first, or I want to get the list of people to reach out to at Wesleyan first. Like, get the ball rolling. Like, you can continue to push it down the line, but then you'll be sitting there kicking yourself later. And it's like, no, actually, go have a conversation, go meet in the career center. Even if it's useless or worthless, like any of those calls or discussions, like you did it, you checked the box, you knew what it was about, and it didn't harm anyone. I'd always open as many doors as you can and then close them later. Um, but the Wesleyan network has been exceptionally strong. I remember my senior year, I was talking, or maybe it was my junior year, I was talking to a group, and I was pushed through pretty much a bunch of rounds just because I was a Wesleyan grad. Expressed my interest, I explained my background. I had a 45-minute conversation with a guy at I think it was Bank of America, and he was like, yeah, actually, if you're really interested, I'm just going to move you to the final round and have a call. Are you free later this afternoon? And I didn't think that stuff happened anymore, but it did. And never even met the guy in person before. So I think moral of the story, like the Wesleyan network's strong. I think, we all kind of get it and we're all on the same page. So it's uh, just get the ball rolling and do something. And I think that'll help you out in the long run. Some of the other stuff will happen along the way, but kind of, staying still isn't going to help you. So I encourage you just get the ball rolling and also like don't be intimidated by anyone else. Like I said, you're going to be going up against Wharton grads or Harvard grads, and while that's great, they're a different background, they're a different fabric than you are, and what you bring to the table is different. So if they're looking to hire a Wharton kid, okay, they're going to hire a Wharton kid and you're not going to get it. There's nothing really you can do at that point. You are who you are. You're an athlete at a really good school. And if they're looking for that type of person and character, okay, like you're going to be the one they take over the kid at Amherst, right? So do what's in your control. Don't think about other people's base knowledge or hey, they're coming in after taking the past 5 summers of courses in finance and their dad is an MD somewhere. Don't worry about that. You're smart and you have a different skill set. And I honestly think you're at an advantage versus sometimes accountants, in my opinion, are a little bit closed-minded. So it's better to be in your position and you can learn a lot of the stuff along the way. Granted, come prepared when you get an interview and nail it because it doesn't really do you any good if you get an interview and you're not prepared for it. But I promise you, if you get the ball rolling, you'll get opportunities. You'll get people to talk to at big firms, at bulge brackets, smaller ones, whatever it is, or if it's a different industry, if it's a consulting company, I'm sure the Wesleyan Network and McKinsey or Bain or wherever it is probably strong. Just start reaching out to folks, talk, have normal conversations. Again, everyone's pretty normal at the end of the day. Just start talking.
Yeah, it's definitely a big part of this course. We're forcing a lot of reps in that area.
Yeah.
Okay, we get a couple guys here who are some of our brighter students, so let them ask a couple questions and I'll finish it up with a couple.
Yeah, I don't think it's a good question. I don't think it's a secret. My brother told me this. They're going to ask you the same questions, right? How do you value a business and those technicals, study those for a weekend or something and nail them down cold. Walk me through a DCF. Like at some point during an investment banking interview, you're going to get asked that question, right? I have interviewed people that have no idea and like they were shocked I asked it. And it's like, that's coming. So be prepared to answer those. On the other side of it, though, be prepared to talk about how you're a little bit different. And I would really emphasize the student athlete side of it. I'm someone who might be a little bit, and maybe I'm a little bit removed because I'm now interviewing investment bankers for Edgewater. But in banking, when I was doing the interviewing there, like I probably had a little bit of a bias towards student athletes just because I know what that day to day looked like. So I would emphasize, hey, I'm busy. Like I'm working my ass off every day. I'm balancing a bunch of different priorities and I'm showing interest in your firm and I've got good grades behind it and I'm a likable person. So like if you can kind of emphasize that you're well balanced, you can multitask and on top of nailing those technicals, that is what you have to do. And I think finding your in too. Tom had mentioned like getting reps, but like honestly, if you throw your hat in the ring at JP Morgan, unless you're like the perfect resume, which not everyone is, you might not stand a chance there. Like they may hire again some other kid that's well connected, but if you can find a way in and know someone at JP Morgan, even if it's a little bit different or it's not in the exact group, they can put you in touch with the right person. So your resume is going on top of the desk versus like I said for Capstone, I don't know if I would have even gotten an interview if I didn't know the kid on the baseball team. And it wasn't like we were best buddies, texting all the time and hanging out. It was just a guy that I was nice to when I saw him in Freeman or when I saw him on Fountain and, normal, I was a normal dude. He was a normal dude. And it was like, yeah, like we'll give you a shot for a first round. And that's all that those connections or networking can get you. And from there, it's kind of in your court to what I was emphasizing on selling yourself a little bit. I'd also say that's a skill, right? I think I like to think I'm a pretty humble person, but you need to work on selling yourself and what actually makes you better than the next person. Because not to say cockiness, but confidence, I think is a pretty good quality. And like, hey, you're selling yourself, you're selling Joe, and again, put it in their court if they like it or not. But you are who you are at the end of the day. So hopefully it's helpful, but happy to elaborate more.
Yeah, so I mean, a couple of those, just to kind of emphasize a couple of those points, when the guys watch this back. But a lot of what we're talking about is like, what is your personal brand? What is your story?
Yep.
And like, and that's not about bragging. That's actually just talking about what's unique about you. And like, and if you can have actually a story that's interesting, like all the better, because some interviewers going to be bored stiff.
Yep.
And so that's how you connect. Is like if you have a funny story, you have an interesting story, whatever it is. And in terms of like, I never was a, oh, I shouldn't say that. I worked at Goldman Sachs briefly and then I quit because I couldn't take it. But all my friends who are bankers and around banking, like it's 100%, everyone says exactly the same thing, which is like if you don't have some anchor network into it, you have no chance. And
Yeah.
so like that's super important to like I mean if you're gonna go after banking, and we're doing it, we're working the Wesleyan network together, but you're gonna need to find a way to get to the top of the stack. Because if you don't, like you can have the perfect resume and you're just not gonna have a chance.
Yeah. There's 30 others like you, and it's
Right.
your point, it's not going to make a difference. And
It shouldn't be that way, but that's the way it is.
yeah. Well, and guys, I would tell you too, like I pull up my own resume and it's like I promise you most of my interviews have been about junior, like most of it is junior hockey related. What is that? How does it work? You know, they people want to talk about something different other than like some of the boring old walk down the BS list of questions. And it's like, okay, this is act, and then you realize that the person's normal. So I always emphasize some of that or made sure I brought it up in conversation, whether that's organically or me kind of throwing a plug in there just so that they take the bait. You talk a little bit more about that. And to Tom's point again, likability is a really, really good quality.
Oh, if I was interviewing you, I'd be talking about hockey the whole goddamn time. You know, honestly, like
Yeah. Yeah.
because that's what I want to talk about. Like,
Yep.
screw finance. Like,
Yeah. Good question. So actually I had the internship at Capstone for 10 weeks. And after that, and going into that too, I was sold on trying to play pro afterwards. Uh, and I literally came down to a decision of do I sign this contract for a full-time job or do I go try to play semi-pro hockey? And I realized I probably had already lost enough teeth along the way, so I was kind of done. Uh, but to your point, going into that, when I talk about opening doors, I had the Team Scotty thing locked in. I knew that if I wanted to graduate, I could give my neighbor a call. I'd get hired in a heartbeat, right? So I had that kind of locked in. I took the capstone internship because I was like, and I never thought I'd be an investment banker. I Earlier in college, I was like, that's not for me. Like, I don't really want to do that, right? These people are working 100-hour weeks and money's everything. And somehow, of course, I ended up landing an internship in the industry. And I thought, okay, worst case, I've got 10 weeks to figure out if I like this or not. If it's miserable, I'm pretty sure I can put up with 10 weeks of, most things. So I went for it, I took it, and I also realized that along the way, I loved the challenge of it. The day went really, really fast where I would look down and at other internships, they might move a little slower where it's like, oh, geez, it's only 10 a.m. versus Capstone where it was like, oh, geez, it's already, 6 or 7. And to this point in my career too, most of my days fly by. I'm intellectually stimulated. I love learning about new businesses. I like the business owners we work with. They're like normal people. And so I've loved what I've done. So I would tell you again, I'm maybe a little biased, but I do love banking, or I did like banking. I wouldn't say loved. I liked banking, and I really love what I do now. Consulting, and I also think both are really good foundational backgrounds in terms of like understanding how a business works. My thought was, if I can understand how a business works, I can go do pretty much anything after that. So I could go get a job at a business, or, I can kind of go wherever I want. So when I took the full-time gig, that was my thought too, work 6 months in it. And if I want to leave and go do corp dev somewhere, I could do that. I could go literally pivot to pretty much most of their jobs. So I wanted to open up those doors. I think consulting is, depending on the type of consulting firm, is really, really strong, and a cool, a cool start. I think it's probably pretty tough to uh, get into like a venture capital firm, but if you can swing it and get in on the ground level, a lot of that work is really interesting. I'm less familiar with it, but understand it. Um, so I'd emphasize like getting to some of those higher ones. I'd probably steer away from like, in my opinion, accounting. I find accounting really boring. I have two siblings that both did audit. One still does audit, and I'm like, I don't know how you do that without going nuts. Um, but I think do something that's genuinely interesting to you that you think will continue to be interesting to you. I think a nightmare of mine that I realized after all of this or during all of this was like, if I was bored 9 to 5, things would go really slowly. And like, I hope I have some good hobbies or could get in really good shape or something like that. Because if I'm going in every Monday to Friday and it's boring and, very redundant, it just wasn't for me. So if you're someone that is trying to get a job so you can go enjoy the weekends, or if you're someone who's like, hey, I want to get a job that I'm actually going to enjoy every day and like at least be challenged, and then decide later if it's, you're what, 19 years old. It's like, heck, I didn't know what I wanted to do back then. I wanted to play hockey. And I also found that I could open as many doors as I could via banking. So I don't know if that answers your question. In short, probably avoid accounting because I think it's boring, uh, longer-winded, and I'd probably go after some of the ones that I think typically are only available to Wesleyan students or Ivy students, or some of those higher finance jobs I still find very compelling just because not only the interest level and the learning that comes with it, but also um, I lost my train of thought, but I would go after it because of that.
All right, cool. I got two final questions. What's your favorite movie?
A little bit older than some of the guys on the phone, but I'd go with two. I'd go Happy Gilmore, or Wedding Crashers.
Wedding Crashers. I'll give you props there. Very good movie. Very good movie. Uh, I love the whole Mom, the lasagna, whatever he says. I don't even know what he says. It's very funny.
Meatloaf.
Meatloaf, the meatloaf, correct. You got it. And then if you want to leave these guys with one word, what would the word be?
generic, but I would, well, the word's not generic, generic response, but I would say enjoy your time. Like I said, if you have the character, right, the rest will kind of come. And yeah, you have to go check the boxes, some of what I had mentioned. That is just part of the grind. But like truly enjoy your time at Wesleyan, enjoy the time around your teammates. It is an incredible place. Everything about it is awesome. And some of my best friends today are still there, are still from there. Um, and don't worry too much about the next step. Like I said, I never thought, I would put off college for a couple years, and heck, I put it off for three. I never thought that I would end up in investment banking. I did it for almost four. Never thought I'd move to Cleveland, and I've been here for uh, 4.5 now. So like, I didn't know what was coming next. I don't think I could have projected it or predicted it. I probably thought I'd end up somewhere in New York City after school and doing something, and I ended up in Boston. It was like things just kept coming, and I kept saying, "Okay, let's take it for a spin. Let's go for it." And it's kind of gotten me to where I am today. So a little less conventional than most people who might have a straighter forward path to banking and PE, but I'm happy. I feel like I've experienced a lot. Like I don't look back and be like, oh, there's 3 years of hockey where I didn't have to go to school or have a job. Like that sucked. Like no, like that was awesome. And in the time you're so worried about like, am I gonna be able to get a scholarship somewhere? Can I go do X, Y, and Z? Meanwhile, it's like if I could look back, just settle down, go take a nap and go hang out with your buddies and enjoy it and keep working hard and it'll come. So not to be too lackadaisical around the future, but if you have the right mentality and you're putting your time and effort into it, good things will happen.
Cool. Well, we'll leave it there. Thanks a lot. Like I said, I think this is actually kind of more relevant probably than some of the other guys we've talked to. And it was a lot of fun. So thanks for the time, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks so much, Tom. Thanks, guys.
All right. All right. Talk to you later.